This regular Medicine Hat City Council meeting of November 18th, 2024 is called to order at 6:30 p.m. and we will begin with a moment for prayer or reflection.
It's Andy McGrogan just doing a mic check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you show your face real briefly? Or like as long as you want, but. Okay, you have been identified. Thank you. We'll have a moment for prayer and reflection. All right. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships to the land. Next up is adoption of previous council meeting minutes, and that's our regular council meeting minutes from November 4th, 2024. Are there any concerns with the minutes? Seeing none, we'll adopt the meeting minutes as presented. Now moving on to adoption of the agenda. I believe Councillor Dumanowski has a couple of amendments.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, the referred line 10.4, the bylaw 4837 and 4836, the red line is correct. However, it is not the bylaw that was published, so there are new handout that match the red line version that will be passed before council at the appropriate time. Also, I wish to add to the agenda a new item for 10.7, collective bargaining with local union 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers motion for ratification with council's support.
Okay, let's vote on that. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Okay, we'll
I'll
vote
second.
Thank you. We'll vote on the amendment.
I vote yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. And that's unanimous. And so okay, so hearing no objections, we will adopt the agenda for the November 18th, 2024 regular City Council meeting as amended. And next up is councillor announcements. I believe Councillor Van Dyke and Councillor Hyder have announcements. Councillor Van Dyke, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. I would like to congratulate two local organizations which received awards recently at the 35th Annual Aztec Awards. The Aztec Awards recognize and celebrate the brightest minds and greatest achievements of outstanding individuals and organizations in the Alberta science and technology innovation community. So congratulations are in order to Praxis Science Outreach. They were the recipients of the Aztec Special Legacy Award for a legacy of inspirational hands-on science experiences in southeastern Alberta. And congratulations to the Kinetic Target Systems Rattler team, winner of the Aztec Award for Regional Innovation, Medicine Hat, for building an innovation sector through becoming a model anchor tenant.
Thank you. That is very exciting news. Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. It's wonderful to see all these city community-minded people here tonight, and I'd love for everyone to come down to Battis Park Friday, November 22nd for the Midnight Madness tree lighting, and it starts at 6 p.m. And it's just a great way to enjoy some time with family, friends, and do some Christmas shopping.
Thank you, Councillor Hyder. Are there any more councillor announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll vote on the adoption of the consent agenda.
On the website svsu.edu, they say, a consent.
Okay,
I vote yes.
Counselor McGrogan, how do you vote?
I vote yes. My apologies.
It appears that Alexa has joined our meeting.
Yes, sorry about that. I just unplugged it there. I got distracted.
Oh, we didn't know who it was, Counselor McGrogan.
I'm guilty.
Okay, moving on to new business, city clerk fees and charges, SDAB appeal fee. The sponsor is City Manager Mitchell. So if you wouldn't mind providing an introduction.
Thank you, through the chair. This is a check-in, as we do every year, on how our fees meet with regional comparators. So we decided to up the subdivision and development appeal fee from $210 effective January 1st, 2025 to $215, so it's more reflective of the trends in the various communities. Thank you.
And this does not require a bylaw amendment? This is just in policy or, okay. Okay. Any discussions? Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. Oh, I need a motion, sorry.
I'll make the motion to approve the subdivision and development appeal fee of $210 effective January 1st, 2025, and a fee of $215 effective January 1st, 2026.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote.
Oh,
And that's unanimous. The next item is administration response to the focused City of Medicine Hat 2024 to 2026 strategic plan. City Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, through the chair. On October 21st, 2024, Council approved a motion to accept and ratify the Focus City of Medicine Hat strategic plan, refocusing our efforts for the last term of Council on 4 key priorities. And they were adopted here, and I'm sure all Council members and the public are familiar with them. But I will just talk about the key performance indicators and the administrative plan to move those forward. So priority number 1 was to define and required service levels for the City of Medicine Hat. Currently, we do not have defined service levels, and it's really incumbent on us as a municipality to make sure that we have our service levels defined so council can identify which services we want to provide and which services we need more than others. So the measurements of success are that we work with city departments in corporate planning and performance on the creation of a detailed list of costed services from external facing operation departments, and that's Q4 of 2025. We did look at Q3 of 2025, but we wanted to make sure that we had the time and the manpower to get the inventory done and that it was accurate. There are some risks with this. We have some challenges with data availability, internal resources, and competing projects. As you know, we've got quite a bit going on, but how we're going to mitigate that is by reallocating and prioritizing resources as required, and if necessary, retain an external consultant. However, we'd rather do it internally because that will help us keep the costs down.
The second piece of this is to implement a workforce strategy, and the lead on that will be People Services. This is part of a 3-year plan, with the first being to conduct a comprehensive workforce assessment of the whole organization. This will enable the city to discover how we're delivering key services and are we meeting targets? Are there ways that we could do it in a different manner? For example, we hear a lot about AI recently. Is there a way that we could look at delivering services, and could technology step in and help us? So this is a 3-year plan. It's something that is very strategic in nature, and it'll identify key roles and how we move forward as a workplace. And every organization does this, and it's really critical to success for our organization. So priority number 2 is to build a resilient and inclusive community. And strategies to achieve this key objective are to lead a provincial municipal community urgent response to social disorder through the establishment of a joint task force. And I have seen this done in other communities. There are challenges facing our community, but we have to remember that we're one level of government and we have certain legislative responsibilities, as does the province and the federal government. So working together collectively, and also with all of our nonprofits that do so much good work in the community, it's really critical that everybody comes together and that we own this as a community. Measurements of success will be a task force is established in Q1 of 2025. The public continues to be informed of the work that the task force is doing, and that's Q1 to Q3 of 2025, and an action plan is produced by the task force to improve implementation, and that is Q2 of 2025. We have to make sure that sometimes, because some of the other organizations don't have the manpower to handle this, if the city is the lead, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily owning all of the issues and all of the problems. That certainly the province and the federal government need to step in where they're needed, but sometimes somebody has to take the facilitation piece and move it forward to get us to the next step. So some of the risks with this is other organizations may choose to participate or not participate. We have to mitigate this by talking about what our desired outcomes are, have a very clear mandate to speak to what we're trying to achieve, have a clear definition of what do we mean by social disorder, because that term could be interpreted by various different people. We have to identify long-term and short-term goals with an eye to systemic solutions. So how are we all going to work together collaboratively and make this a better community for everybody? Priority number 3 is to foster a dynamic and thriving community economy, and that is action the regional economic development strategy. And you have seen recently, as last week, Economic Development came and gave a presentation on what they've been working on. They'll also be back on December 16th to talk about this and to talk about how they plan on moving forward. So how we will measure this success is that the regional economic development strategy is developed and includes regional priorities and competitive advantages. Strategy and optimal framework for implementation is presented to Council in Q1 of 2025. Municipalities feel supported and they are aligning their individual strengths with the regional strategy. Implementation with regional partners over 25-26 with the goal of continued long-term engagement. And one of the challenges and the risks are some municipalities with the regional strategy may not sign up, they may not buy in, but we have to work with those who are willing, and we have to lend a hand to those who may not have the available workforce and the depth of workforce that we do. One of the second things under that priority is also to create opportunities to incentivize businesses and reduce barriers. And the lead in this is development services. And we've heard this loud and clear, and Council's heard this loud and clear, that some of the challenges facing developers and development opportunities are our red tape and our processes. So Development Services will be leading this, and we want to make sure that the objective is to inspire confidence in administration by implementing an open inquiry and reporting system that's accessible by applicants and property owners. We want to set expectations for performance and evaluate, establish, and adhere to targeted timelines. But we have to carefully manage expectations. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We have to make sure that our timelines and our mandates are manageable with our current workforce. So measurements of success under this is develop and implement a public-facing inquiry application for all city development permits that is live, similar to our business license query that has just gone live, and that will be Q1 of 2025. We will collect data and develop a service level standard, determine with certainty actual time allocations needed for staff to process 80% of the time, and publish targeted timelines to the city. And that's also Q1 of 2025. We want to create a pilot project to evaluate a center-led process to shepherd strategic opportunities. And I've been here for almost 2 years, and I can't tell you how many times developers have said to me, and I'm sure they've said it to council, that they get lost in the system. And we need, whether it's an ambassador or how it works, it'll be led by economic development, but we're looking at, when we bring developers in, what are your expectations? What are the processes you have to go in? And through the whole process, not just piece by piece. So that's Q1 of 2025. Also, we'll develop a plan to identify, advocate, and instill clarity on the process that will assist developers in having the confidence to determine if they want to invest in the community. So we have to do better so our community can do better. And that's Q2 of 2025. Some of the risks are making sure that we are meeting our regulatory compliance. We don't want to have overly ambitious timelines so that we miss targets. And I think we have to very clearly lay out to the developers at the very beginning, this is the challenges you're facing. Here are some of the hurdles, and be very clear up front so the developer knows that, do I want to go forward with this or do I not? And I think you can't develop this, but you may be able to do this. So I think we can do a better job of that administratively. We have to define expectations with the proponents, and we have to take into consideration the capacity of staff. Some of the challenges, we have to make sure we're following the MGA. We also look to the Municipal Servicing Standards Manual, Environment and Protected Areas, and all the other various pieces of legislation that we fall under. And we have to make sure that we're being very equitable so that everybody is being treated the same and the same rules apply. Priority number 4 is action, recreation, and wellness opportunity. And this is developing a multifaceted recreation complex on the south side. The lead for this initiative is Parks and Recreation. Strategies to achieve this objective are site determination and acquisition, complete facilities needs assessment, determine operation model, commence tendering process for facility construction, and communicate next phases of facilities for the future with City Council and the general public. Measurements of success, Council will approve the scope and vision for a multifaceted recreation complex on the south side in Q1 of 2025. City Council will approve the site location, Q1 2025. City Council approval for administration to initiate land acquisition negotiations, 2025 Q1. We're going to be busy. Ensure preferred site has no other plans or easements, and complete facility needs and public engagement. Council approve of initial funding to complete the high-level planning for this, Q1 2025, and engagement of the public to make sure the stakeholders are on board and understand the process. We have to determine the operation model. We have to look at all options. What's the best model for running this facility? And we have to make sure that Council's aware of those various models. present potential facility costs to council, and then a decision in Q2 of 2025 with a City Council decision on the operating model. City Council approval of funding request Q4 of 2025, and granted, we know that this will be going into the next term of council. However, we can't stop doing the business of the city knowing there's an election. We have to carry on with the facilities for the future. Some of the risks for this are available funding may not be sufficient to cover all the costs, public support of the recreation center and site selection, and that may be, challenging to make sure that it's meeting everybody's needs. Some of the mitigation we thought about was exploring funding partnerships with some regional partners, the province of Alberta and possibly the federal government, and conduct a comprehensive public engagement campaign so that the citizens of the community feel heard and that their voice is being put forward through this process, because this is a very big process. The final one from this priority is determine the future of the existing facilities. We do have quite a few facilities, and this will fall under fleet and facilities. Strategies to achieve this key objective is to do business cases for all the facilities, to understand the condition assessment of each facility, the cost of demolition, the cost of keeping it open, the impact on the workforce, and those things will be presented to council so council can make decisions, prudent decisions moving forward on how they want to address those facilities. Some of the risks are funding, public expectation, council election. And I'm done and open for questions.
Any questions? Councillor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, I don't have any questions per se, but I will make a comment, if I may. I appreciate City Manager Mitchell, you bringing the strategic priority roadmap, if you will, that Council has reestablished here recently. Appreciating that there are some realistic but yet robust goals before us and senior administration to move this forward. I appreciated the comments around moving the business forward, regardless of an election in 10, 11 months from now. The city business continues. The focus on 4 priorities will help refine where our energies should be placed. I appreciated the scaffold, if you will, that you outlined for each of these, the key performance indicators. My question, I guess, there's a timeline, and you mentioned the Q1, 2, 3, 4 of the next year upon which these will be accomplished or moved forward. Will that be a public-facing document in any fashion that they can observe with regularity?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Dumanowski. Yes, it will be a public-facing document, and my intention is to come back to council regularly, and I'm even saying more than every quarter, because given that it's less than a year in council's term, I would like to see it bi-monthly. We are looking at initiating a CAO update with the council package, and in that would be the progress that we're making on the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Council, can I get a motion?
I move that council approves the proposed plans and actions of administration as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk, through the chair to our city manager. I also echo what Councillor Dumanowski has stated in regards to my appreciation of the clarity coming forward and posing what you see as the steps required in order to make this happen. I have confidence based on the prior evidence of your team that many of these things will come to fruition in a short amount of time. I am concerned about the amount of work, and I'm looking for your thoughts on what is it that gives you confidence that this is possible, for one? What exactly, and this is more of a conceptual question, because I know you have the ability to drive it down into your team, but, you know, we as a council have our vision, and then you are going to action those things. So what exactly gives you that confidence? And then secondly, and it's gone from my mind, so I'll just let you answer that first question.
Thank you. Through the chair, one of the things that, you know, being in charge of the organization and having done this previously, understanding what we need to move forward, these pieces are all extremely critical. If we talk about implementing council's vision, I hear over and over again from council and from the public that we need to be more streamlined, we need to pivot better, and all of this comes from clearer processes. So a lot of the key points and key indicators that you see in here are things that will help us be a leaner organization. Certainly identifying our services and how we provide services and the cost is very critical to us as we move forward. So that's something that has been in the works, and now we're solidifying it through this document. The workforce strategy, which services does council want to provide to the community? That if we can't, as administration, come to you and say, it costs this much to snowplow every day, then how are you going to make a well-founded decision? You can't. Also, how do you know how we're delivering services? So the workforce strategy is another piece that's going to help implement your vision, because we can be a leaner and better organization, and we can pivot if we have better processes. So I kind of answered your question, but I feel confident in the team. It's such a great idea to check in on strategic plan, because we're here to implement council's vision. And so when we had that check-in at the beginning of October, and then we brought them forward here, it really reinvigorated the staff, because we have clear directives now what council is expecting of us. So.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I remembered what I was going to say. So in regards to what Councillor Dumanowski said about having a report for the public, is it possible to integrate that into our website so that there's some visuals in regards to, here are our touch points, these are the markers of success that we hope to complete, and then some, you know, some visuals, okay, yeah, this is where we're at, some sort of chart?
Yes, we will, and it's always a good idea, because if council is judged on their strategic plan, having those check-ins communicated to the public is a clear indicator of how council is implementing their vision. So yes, that will be part of it as well, not just council reports, but out to the community as well too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you. Through the chair, just appreciate this journey that we've both been on between council, looking at the remainder of the term and looking at some tangible things that can be done. I do recognize as well that some of this work is going to be beyond the term of this current council. But quite frankly, I hope that it gets repetitive as the years go by. And what I'm specific with is the efficiencies piece that you're talking about in terms of the review of the organization. So time and time again, we always hear through the community that, are we spending our money wisely, et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the killers of efficiencies is we've always done it this way. So if we can stop that idea and looking at the efficiencies in terms of and you indicated as well, advances in AI, advances in technology, is there, you know, kind of a better way to build the mousetrap is always the famous theme. So so I am quite ecstatic on that. One of the things that was a vestige of the remainder of what I found was really helpful when we talk about economic development, and you mentioned staff that would work with developers along the way. They called it the concierge service. So essentially being able to work with those individuals that want, you know, a smooth transition through their process, and we all do. If we have plans or get a development permit or whatever, we want to be able to have that experience and have someone kind of shepherd through it, because for the most part, it might be our first time, or maybe not in the case of the developer, but we certainly want to encourage the developers within this community to kind of continue on, and so I'm pretty happy with that. Some of the comments you made in terms of that, in terms of where we're heading, is some have tangible tasks that you spoke to, and some signal direction. So for example, we don't see our new recreational center being built within this term. However, this council's decided to point in that direction, and off we go. So I'm happy with that. You know, again, you spoke to some of the challenges that I can just imagine, because you've got a current workforce that's tasked. So if we believe that we've got an efficient and functional group of individuals within their role, introducing this mandate almost can't be done on the corner of their desk. So some of it is going to be, to the point of Councillor Knodel, is trying to drive this innovation expediently as we can, and with as much cost consciousness as we can, but knowing that in the end, we probably will be the efficiencies will be there, the savings will be there in the end. So that, you know, I appreciate your presentation, City Manager, and I look forward to the fruits of the labor. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, and you didn't ask a question, but I just did want to kind of highlight one thing, is that I've always said since I came here, we are, administration and council, responsible for the public purse, but more than that, we want to run a sustainable organization. And people who come to work here every day do so because they're in the public sector and they want to do good things for their community. So in my mind, almost all employees in every organization I've worked with, they want to work in a sustainable organization. So to me, that is more reason to make sure this gets implemented.
It's well appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, city manager, really appreciate this. It's really nice to be able to, I guess, have a tangible kind of view of some of the things that we can get done over the next year to set the next council up for, I think, better success. So thank you for this. I think it's excellent, and it reflects, I guess, our 2 days of conversation that we had in relation to our strategic plan and some things that we could do. I regret that we didn't do it probably a year ago, but you know, things are where they are for a reason. So thank you. A couple things I wanted to say is, one is in relation to the workforce strategy. So I'm really appreciative that, you know, we've got kind of a look at the organization. All this talk about, you know, positions and where they fit and we right size and all this, I'm really looking forward to seeing where that washes out for the community's sake, that they have confidence in, you know what, we've done a review, we're right sized, or maybe we're not. And one of the things that I heard in my last life was, you know, we never take money from the taxpayer's pocket until we absolutely have to. And being we have a budget here coming up, if you find efficiencies as you roll along, will we adjust our tax, I guess what we're going to take out of our taxpayers' pockets as we go along, if we do find efficiencies? So that's my one question. Just another question that I have, if you want to answer that, or you want me to go ahead with the second one? I'll actually ask my second one next.
Okay, through the chair to Councillor McGrogan, yes, and I think Managing Director Egert has stated this, I believe you were away at that meeting, but one of our council committees of the whole budget was 25-26. However, it's a 2-year budget, and if efficiencies are found in 25, certainly that will be applied to 26.
Excellent, thank you. So that's really good to hear. And you know, I suppose as we get our variance reports, we'll see that even through the next year, if there are efficiencies during the year. So, you know, that's great. The other thing that kind of tweaked me in regards to priority 3, I really like the idea of, you know, having a concierge service, whatever you want to call it, for our developers. The other piece that I hear a lot about, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, is there's a lot of let's say subcontractors that are doing piecemeal work for, or by the hour, cost plus work for the city. And I'm wondering if we're looking at that and how we can make that more efficient, and whether or not we should be maybe going to tender on some of these issues. And Because that's probably the thing I hear about more from the community. So again, I don't want to get in the weeds too much, but I was curious about whether part of the review is saying, okay, we have all these, contractors that we just tap on the shoulder, and other contractors say, hey, why do they keep getting the work? They've never asked me for a price, blah, blah, blah. I'm just wondering if there's a system that we could, again, create confidence to those subcontractors in our community. And I know there is one because we've dealt with them a few times. So I don't know if you could have someone speak to that, city manager. I would appreciate hearing your views on that.
Thank you. Through the chair, that will be part of the workforce strategy, because some of the things that we've discovered, Councillor McGrogan, is that if there's vacancies in certain areas, sometimes those are being covered with contractors. So as part of the workforce strategy, we're looking at not only our full-time, not only our part-time, but also how we deal with those outside contracts. Is it more prudent to contract, or is it more prudent to have a full-time employee? And that's part of the whole entire workforce strategy. But a further piece than that is just the way we do things here. And you've heard me mention this many times, that because we are so large and complex, we're very siloed, and we almost ran through business units. So what happened there is some departments were doing things a certain way and another way, and now we're trying to have a holistic system where everybody is following the same procedures. So those are the two pieces, I think, that answer your question.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I just want to finish by saying what I started saying is thank you for what you've done and your admin team. I think it really gives me a feeling of confidence. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hirsch.
Apologies for speaking twice on this, but I just do have a question, City Manager. We do talk about, and effectively what you're speaking to is change management. So I guess, can you let council know, and maybe you've got the ability to have a bit of a soapbox here, to kind of explain what the messaging has been to staff in regards to the workforce strategy? So obviously, anytime change is made makes people nervous, and I do appreciate we've got implications for staff. So, but having said that, I know we have turnover, I know we have retirements, et cetera. So maybe can you just kind of highlight a little bit, maybe for the viewing public and the group and council, for what your thoughts are?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Hirsch, I think that we've told staff that in the past there's been other iterations of looking at the workforce and the way the workforce was addressed. This, and not to throw shade on past, everybody was at different, I say we always have to assume positive intent. People made the best decisions at the time. This is a very strategic workforce strategy, so it's looking at it in its entirety. And I tell staff quite a lot that we want to come to work in a sustainable organization. And because we're keepers of the public purse, we have to make sure that we're doing that very strategically. This is why this is not going to happen overnight. This is why this is a 3-year plan, and we've been very thoughtful. We're looking at attrition. We're looking at if a position's been vacant for 5 years, why has it been vacant? Is there a need for that? So that's why it's going to take us this long. First year is going to be identify the critical roles. How do we move this forward? And then we look at all of that. So we're not doing it in a vacuum. It's throughout the whole organization. There's interviews with a lot of the staff. And yes, change is frightening, but any organization, workforce is our biggest expense. So we have to look at how we're delivering services, and we have to be responsible to you as a council, so we can come to you and say, it's costing us this much to deliver this service. But if we can find a different way to deliver it, whether it's work with different communities, whether it's, less people, more technology, and that is scary, but we do have to look at it. And Councillor McGrogan said it. We may be right-sized, but we may not. And I remember Councillor Dumanowski also said, there may be areas where we see we need more staff and we're understaffed. So that's what this whole strategy is going to look at. Yep.
I have some questions and comments. I think it's not so much the change that would worry people, but job loss. And I'm not understanding how we would, or why we would do a workforce strategy before we actually know our service levels, and those have been approved by council. Could end up getting rid of people, and then we need a higher level of service.
Through the chair to the chair, we're doing them in tandem. There won't be any implementation of the workforce strategy until the 3rd year. The service delivery inventory will be done in a year and possibly 2.
Okay. It looks like Q4 2025 for the measurement of success on the implement a workforce strategy. I personally view the measurements of success as more of outputs than outcomes. Like, what are we trying to achieve would be helpful. Like, what are the key outcomes rather than outputs? And in terms of the joint task force, I can't support that until I know what you mean, or whoever came up with that, what they mean by social disorder. Because you said we'll have to figure out what we mean by social disorder. I'm not willing to support something if I don't really know what it means. Because if you look up the dictionary definition of it, it's very, very broad. Additionally, Medicine Hat Community Housing, in cooperation with the City of Medicine Hat, held 4 community summits over the last year and a half, maybe. And I'm also reluctant to support this without knowing that this is what the community groups and other levels of government that are necessary, and including the police, that they actually want this, that they actually need it, and we're not just imposing it upon them. So I think that until I have confirmation that the groups that actually are responsible for this and are actually doing this, that they think that this would be helpful, and maybe they will think it's helpful, but I would like that question to be answered before I support it.
Can I respond to that piece before you carry on?
Sure.
Yeah, there has been some initial conversations with the different groups. Social disorder, we can define it here as a council, but if it's a multi-level task force, we would have to first of all get everybody to the table to have the discussion, because we can't, as one entity in a multiple entity task force, we cannot dictate the mandate. So we would have to get there and sit down at the table first of all. So this is an intention to sit down. This isn't a commitment. It's an intention to sit down with the various groups and the various levels of the province and to have a conversation. How do you think this would be best suited?
Well, it does talk about actions that come out of the task force. So it isn't just we'll see if this is a need within the community that is responsible for this.
Should the task force be successful, but you also see in there as well, it does talk about terms of reference, so the whole collective group would have to be in agreement.
Yeah, I would just first like to know whether that's something that the groups that are actually responsible for this would find helpful, and again, maybe they will, but I don't want to insert ourselves into something that, where we are not needed or wanted. I think certainly we should support the groups that are doing this in every way that we can, but I think the city sometimes has a reputation for being the big brother, and I only would like to do this if that's a need that's been identified by the community groups doing this, and also don't know how much it'll cost. So I'm not going to support that one. And then I think that was all of my comments. So outcomes instead of outputs, doing the service levels, which you answered, before we do our review of the human resources in the city, and then the two things on the joint task force that I mentioned. Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, through the chair. I actually want to just jump in a little bit here because I feel like that social disorder might have been a little bit of my verbiage, so I'm going to apologize if that's offended anybody. But when we were at the strategic plan, and I know that you weren't able to attend, and it's too bad because I do think that it was such a good meeting for all of us. The very next, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, we were all at an economic development forum, and I think there was Councillor McGrogan, myself, and Councillor Hirsch. And I was asked to introduce the Premier, so I did, and I did it with the caveat that I got 5 minutes alone with her. So I did get 5 minutes alone with her. So I'm going to take some of this responsibility. As a downtown business owner, it's becoming more and more difficult to conduct our business downtown. And not that we don't want any harm to come to these people. We need to figure out a way to create an environment that's healthy for our vulnerable downtown as well as the business owners downtown. But more and more, you're also hearing how it's a provincial responsibility. So it is provincial funding, but it is our backyard. So we as a council thought that maybe we'd have a conversation. So when I had the opportunity to get 5 minutes with our Premier, I got it. And I just said, here's the deal. We need your help. You need ours. You're our MLA. We want to do something for all vulnerable with our community. We don't want them freezing in the middle of the winter. They need to be housed. They need to be safe, but so do I as a business owner. And it's been harder and harder to conduct business. It's not safe at times. In fact, it's been very unsafe. So we're all in this together. So that was never meant to be something that we caused any harm to anybody or working outside of our community groups, but rather with our community groups. But as the city, as a business owner downtown, it's the businesses that are complaining over and over, and they're feeling like they're not safe, and they're hiring security, and they're shutting their doors, and we've lost more businesses. So the intent behind this was nothing but good. It was never meant to do anything but look after our most vulnerable, with partnership with our MLA, our province, and, we want to retain our businesses downtown. But there's a lot of, I don't think sometimes people realize how many female-led businesses there are downtown, and they're feeling very unsafe sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I want everybody to be safe, and I want our vulnerable to be safe, and I don't want them to freeze to death. So the intent, Mayor Clark, was never to be going around anybody, but to be with them, but to know that it was our backyard and we take responsibility. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes, I did not mean to imply that there were not issues with, safety concerns and refuse. Councillor McGrogan, do you have your hand up again?
I do. Do you mind if I
Okay.
just make a
No,
comment?
I do not. Go ahead.
Thank you. And to the chair, I appreciate your comments. But I guess I want to, confirm what Councillor Sharps had to say. The intent was really to stay in our lane, understand that, there's work being done, but how can we, as a council, being it is, as Councillor Sharps put it, our backyard, how can we be more front-facing in the areas without taking fiscal responsibility? So that was kind of the discussion we had that evening. So I just wanted to say that, and I do agree with you that we need to stay in our lane, but we also need to be, as community leaders, we need to be a little more visible, I guess, but not, and I agree, let's not get in the way. Like I heard, when I was elected, I had a wise person tell me, sometimes the best thing we can do as councilors is stay the hell out of the way. And I think that's a great example of that. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess my whole point is just that I think that we should ask the people who are delivering these services what they need from us. And if this would be helpful before we say that we're doing it. And again, they may totally come back and say, yes, this is exactly what we need. And then I'm happy with that. But I just, us deciding that we're going to do it is almost not collaborative because we're saying we're gonna have a task force, you guys should participate in it. And without it having, you know, that discussion about, is this going to be something that's helpful to you? So that's my concern. Again, I appreciate both of your and Councillor Sharps's comments for sure. And I recognize that there is a concern and it needs to be addressed. It's just how we go about participating in that in a way that maximizes our efforts collectively. All right. I don't see any further comments. Did we have a motion? Yep. Okay, thank you, Cassie. So we'll go ahead and vote.
Councillor McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. And that passes. So we'll move on to our next item, which is Town Square Update 2024. And with us, we have Aaron Nelson, Manager Cultural Experiences and Events, and he has a presentation for us.
Through the chair, we all know about the CCANs, and that's been very well publicized. And I'm really excited. There's so much community interest in the CCANs, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you very much, City Manager Mitchell. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be presenting our season update on Town Square today. So I want to start this by saying Town Square is successful. We've successfully remediated an underutilized site to create vibrancy for our community. So many in the room can recognize a photograph such as this during construction, and this is what our community has now. We have much needed off-street, clean, safe, and well-lit outdoor event space and parking. Just to kind of wrap up, or just introduce what we committed to at the end of last season. So we continued to commit to activate Town Square as part of our community canvas. We committed to activating the market pods with a view of continuing to activate, evolve activation, or stop activation. Talk a little bit more about that. And then we committed to report on the downtown washroom pilot project. That report will come, although it is not part of this presentation. That will go to public services by the end of Q4. So let's talk about some of the successes first. Parking was successful, and I'll explain that in a moment. Our Lighting for a Cause program, the block parties, which maybe many in this room have attended this summer, and our community activations. We did, however, experience challenges this year. So one of the challenges is the market pod's value to users. And when I say users, that's the people that were vending inside the market pods or using them for their various activities. And we saw a dramatic increase of the nighttime use of Town Square, unprescribed use of Town Square.
Before you go on, Councillor Hirsch has a question.
I was just going to wait until after the presentation.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
Good engagement, though, that you have questions already. That's a good sign. So let's talk a little bit about parking. So I will point out that it is not Town Square. It is actually a rectangle, and I'm not being facetious about that. It's to illustrate that most of that site is a parking lot, and it functions very well as a parking lot. It is well lit. It is safe. And we're on track to kind of hit our revenue that we hit in 2023. There was... we've seen some diminished activity in downtown due to construction this year. We were able to provide 10 free spots of parking at Town Square this summer to assist downtown business owners. So we'll probably come in just shy of the revenue that we earned last year in terms of parking. Our Lighting for a Cause program. Many nights you'll pass Town Square, you'll see it lit up in different colors. This has been quite successful, and we've had 10 different organizations light Town Square for a period of 54 days. And what that does is that really highlights the good work that some organizations do in our community. So examples would be organizations like the Medicine at Health Foundation, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, School Age Directors of Alberta. We of course, we do try to theme it as well for holidays or different times of year, and you may even have seen it lit up as blue and orange during the playoff run for the Oilers. So it is a different way to provide vibrancy in our community. Thanks, Joe. We did activate Town Square this summer with our block parties. So we did 11 block parties this year, and those happened most Saturdays during the summer between 12 and 4. Average attendance per week was about 200 per week. There were some weeks that were very well attended, and other weeks that were attendance was quite sparse, mostly due to weather, and that would be wind or rain. The idea of the blocks parties were to have multiple themes, so they would be different type of event every Saturday, so you could come down on successive Saturdays and have different experiences. What we found is it helped the city of Medicine Hat build valuable relationships with our community, some of the smaller community groups that we don't get to work with so often, and some of the individual vendors who were able to set up at town squares as well. And it was I think this year it was much needed downtown to provide some, as a draw for people downtown during our construction season. And another success we had this year was community use. So we saw activations by community groups that takes on the activation of that space. And that was Rise Up Balloon Festival. I did quite a festival there. And there was a very early season art market as well. So what we tried to do down with Town Square this summer is meet people where they're at. And that is in terms of the type of programming that we offer, so what types of programming we offer and where we offer it. And one thing we learned this summer is some of the programming that we tried to offer down at Town Square was probably more appropriate in other assets that the city owns. So if we go across the street, we have assets in Riverside Memorial Park, like we have a stage, we have shade. You're able to adjust the volume by how far you're away by the stage. It's not as close to the street. So some feedback we heard from young families is Town Square is not a great place for young families with children on a busy intersection. And it can be very, very hot in the parking lot. So the sunshade is a treasure for our community, but not everybody for a large event can fit under that sunshade. A question that we really asked this summer is, are the market pods providing value? So collectively, they were used for 80 hours this summer. So you think that's for the entire year. So it's pretty low utilization, when you're thinking you're using them for 4 hours on a Saturday. And they're a difficult environment. So they look great on the outside. Spending 4 hours on a hot day in one of those market pods is just not comfortable. And there's really no method to make them comfortable. They don't have an HVAC system in them. And then of course they're only suitable for a certain period of the year, because if it's below, say, 18 degrees outside, again, they're not heated. So it's very difficult to be in a market pod. So let's talk a little bit about the increase in overnight use. So we've seen a sharp increase in overnight use, and that has precipitated an increase in vandalism and break-ins at Town Square, quite a significant increase. You'll notice we have the doors on the sea cans. Those are not the original doors of a shipping container, so they're very difficult to secure, and we've many break-ins market pods this year, which makes them unsuitable for overnight storage. So if a vendor has something happening 2 days in a row, they literally have to take all of their stuff out, take it home, come back the next day. So they're not really functioning for their originally intended purpose in that way. Our proactive engagement and community enhancement team, known as the Peace Team, would visit Town Square on Tuesdays and Thursdays mornings, talking about meeting people where they're at. So this team is composed of Medicine Hat Fire Services, Medicine Hat Police Services, Bylaw, Medicine Hat Community Housing, Mawasson, was able to meet people very early in the morning, oftentimes 7 o'clock in the morning, to provide information on where they could obtain services, other areas in our community that would provide services for them to sleep overnight. So an excellent example of really trying to get to the core of the problem by talking to people, letting them know what's out there. So in the context of both of our successes and our challenges, administration is making the recommendation to remove the market pods from Town Square immediately, and they would be relocated to Marshall Yard. This is a photograph of what Town Square would look like. This is AI generated, but without the market pods. So you can see it doesn't look radically different if we remove the market pods. If that recommendation is accepted, we would move the market pods immediately. There is a cost to moving the market pods. It's about $20,000. That may seem steep, but I do remind council that about a third of that cost is the decommissioning of the electrical services to the market pods. The rest of that is moving the market pods. That is to move them as a group. If they were to be moved individually, the cost could escalate by about a factor of 3, just because there's no economy of scale with the decommissioning and the moving. Staff would determine future use for community benefit and community, and I think if the market pods did not have, or if they were moved, programming could continue at Town Square. So Town Square, what happens at Town Square is not dependent on the market pods. We did present this 1 month ago to Public Services Committee, and the committee did ask administration to do some engagement. So I'd just like to present the results of that engagement, public engagement. We did a 2-pronged approach to public engagement. One prong was to ask our Community Vibrancy Advisory Board. So this is what they came up with. So they determined it would be very important to honor the values of the grant parameters. So these CCANs were 95% grant funded when they were funded. So it's really important to honor the grants and focus on community vibrancy. They had some great ideas. So Community Vibrancy Advisory Board is some volunteers in our community who have a passion for vibrancy and excellent creative ideas. So storage space for nonprofits, recreation, gardening activities. There's examples of CCANs being turned into greenhouses, markets in other locations where there is proven existing need for a market, other city department use. So this could be used for storage at a ball diamond or something like that, and then entrepreneurial activities. I think one of the best recommendations in the Community Vibrancy Advisory Board is the idea of the process for how we could solicit to dispose or to repurpose the market pods. And they proposed a pitch meeting or a Dragon's Den sort of idea. This is similar to what Medicine Hat College does through Enactus. So I thought that was a very interesting idea. And they did mention that more community feedback would be helpful. So we did do more community feedback. So for several weeks this fall on Shape Your City, we did engage our community with the Seek in the CCAN suggestions, very alliterative title. So we asked our community to share ideas, comment on the ideas that were shared, and then upvote ideas thought to be of high community benefit. We had this number in there is incorrect. We had 1,200 page views with 124 contributors. And I hope council is buoyed by the creativity and the thoughtfulness of our community, because there were so many good ideas that the community had. So we're not going to cover all of those today, but I'll just cover some of the main themes. So some of the top ranked themes were the idea of concessions in parks. So these would be pop-up concessions in public areas such as parks. Schools actually rated pretty high, concessions at schools. A portion of our community thought just outright sale and an auction to recover the funds was a good idea. Many in our community thought shelter and housing. So seeing that that there are folks in our community who are unhoused, that maybe this could be part of the solution. community storage, recreation, event rentals, and community projects again. So there are many, many good ideas out there. We will, as of tomorrow, we'll publish our What We Heard report on Shape Your City. So our community will be able to review some of the good ideas out there from our community members. So the next step, if the recommendation is approved, is to move the CCANs to the city storage yard. As I mentioned, that would be immediately. Staff and administration would then develop a scoring rubric that would take into account the benefits to the community and the value to the taxpayers. There would be a call for interest and evaluation, and then the eventual repurposing of the CCANs at Town Square. I did start this presentation talking about Town Square, and I think I'd like to end it that way. So whether the CCANs are there or not, Town Square will be a vibrant place in the future. I mentioned it is mostly a parking lot. It functions as a park, provides all the functions of a parking lot. And that sunshade is a unique draw to visitors downtown. If people aren't going there for events, they're having lunch there, they're meeting friends there, they're having a coffee. So I do feel that Town Square will continue to be successful as it is. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hirsch.
Well, thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Manager Nelson, for the presentation. I'm not going to reframe Town Square in terms of the history lesson, but I think important facts need to be reminded upon, and you did touch on it. We did, prior to this development, have a site that was contaminated and non-functional. So during COVID, we received COVID funding via the federal government due to application, and we were successful with that grant to remediate this plot of land and get rid of the contaminants to make it functional, and created something I think that was one of innovation and thoughtfulness, that how could we bring something that was a bit of an eyesore and costly, would have been costly to the Medicine Hat taxpayer, alive, especially in a notable intersection, which is the corner of City Hall, Riverside Veterans Memorial Park, and something that really relates to First Street down through the Esplanade. So I appreciate the history of this, and I think it's important for us to remind ourselves. I also want to appreciate the idea of innovation that you did, even with the CCANs. We've always been in a world where taxpayers, us as council, want innovative ideas, and I think there was an intentionality to it with regards to CCANs. There was ramifications and results of that, but you know what, I appreciate the try that we did, and I think the intentionality of bringing people together, and that was some of your commentary, is notable and noteworthy. I guess, so all that said, maybe you talked a bit about the vision of the square, Town Square, as you indicated, but it's actually rectangle. Can you elaborate a little bit on, is it on a go-forward basis, what thoughts, is it a continuation of the block party, other programming ideas? Maybe this is your chance to kind of future cast us a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Hirsch. I do appreciate that opportunity through the chair. I see the vision, more community activation or existing community activation. So things like the Balloon Festival. So where we need that space downtown. Chili Cook-Off is another good example. Midnight Madness. Again, having that well-lit, safe space downtown. This is excluding the CCANs. I see more activation like that. I see more spontaneous interaction as well. So the CCANs did attract a lot of refuse, and I'm going to say even, well, we live in the prairies, tumbleweeds, right? So debris would blow in there, and it's very difficult to remove, right? So it had this kind of unkept look to it unless it was tended to every day. So without those sea cans there, you wouldn't have that. So again, it would be a much more comfortable place to go have lunch afternoon in a sunny afternoon. We also have the food truck alley there. So we do not charge food trucks to plug in there and serve customers. So the idea is that that can a good entrepreneur in our community could take that on and really develop a market there. So those are the sorts of things. And in terms of the city directly programming it, it may become part of programs like Art in Motion in the future or other spontaneous programs, but there's no defined plan to do anything like the block parties again at Town Square.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and through the chair. So I do have a couple of questions. I don't think it's been any secret that I was never a big fan. However, I will say that you made me eat crow on a few occasions. The events were good. They were well done. They were well received. But I'm not upset that this is moving because at night it is quite awful down there, and even sometimes during the day. So I used to walk downtown twice a day for a coffee, and I'd go down second and back up first, and so it got a little hairy sometimes. So again, I'm glad to see it. I will say that it's also very beautiful. There's been times where I've managed to grab a lunch and I don't need a tan, so I was looking for shade. So I would go hide under that bench and that solar panel, and it was fantastic. It was beautiful. So I do think that the city employees did a really good job of trying to make it a success, and I appreciate that, but I'm not upset that it's going away, and I'm not gonna lie. But I do have a couple of questions, Erin. Number one, with the food trucks, how do we rationalize this when we have restaurants on Second and Third that are paying leases and mortgages and utilities, and a food truck can come up for free and plug in? How do we justify that to our downtown businesses, especially after all the construction that they've gone through? And I don't necessarily need an answer. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a thought from a business owner perspective. When I'm paying, $30,000 in mortgage and another $10,000 to $10,000 in insurance and taxes, and then all of a sudden a food truck comes up for free. It's just something, why am I putting so much into brick and mortar? Why am I putting into employees, into occupations, if a food truck, I can get free rent? So it's just something I would like some consideration on. So you don't need to answer me, but just, I'd like you to think about it from a business owner point of view. It's our money, it's our out of pocket, so it's something we want to think about. With the pods, I have to ask a question. If it's $20,000 to move and approximately 1/3 is electrical, so that's still about, right, 14 to move it, is there not benefit in kind of doing a lottery to see who wants them, and see if we can donate them to community groups that are in desperate need? Would we not have, and is that something that is being taken into consideration, or is it movement only?
Oh, I'm through the chair, so I will respond, and I apologize if I was not clear. No, we're moving them, and then we will go to the community to determine community benefit and find out the best way to repurpose them in the community. So we will take on moving them to Marshall Yard, because I think it's really difficult to move them one at a time.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So either way, we're going to look at a $14,000 bill to move this,
Correct.
and then potentially cost us more.
I would say that that is yet to be determined. We would need to request council for a budget amendment if we were to do that. It could be as is where is as well, right? So they could be moved to be repurposed from Marshall Yard to wherever they're going to be repurposed. That doesn't necessarily have to be on our dime.
So then I have a really dumb question. If it is as is where is there not a potential do as is where they are right now and save the taxpayer $20,000 or $14,000?
Yes, however, that process could take a long time. We have to design the process, and it could mean that they come out of there one at a time over an undetermined period of time. So we will still incur all of the vandalism, all of the break-in charges, all of the graffiti still. So if we keep those there, we're still incurring costs.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through the chair to Manager Aaron. So I, from the get-go, wasn't as much of a I wasn't so frustrated with this particular project. I've seen CCANs successful in places like Kensington, Inglewood, and Calgary, and see how the industrial aesthetic can be really appealing, and it's very resilient and colorful, and I enjoy it. And I'm sad that the outcome is what it has been. It's disappointing, and despite a group in the community not being a supporter, I think there was still people that enjoyed what it did bring. So thank you to giving it a go and wishing that it had a better outcome. So I think that seeing 200 visitors approximately per event is a decent turnout. I would like to remind the community that this, in my perspective, this was the municipality's response to a desire for more community programming, and having those Saturday events was the City of Medicine Hat really going, okay, we hear you, let's give this a try. And I think that's a huge deal. That's a big win, because we are responsible as a municipality for offering services to the city, but we don't have to do things as we did here. But that's a choice, and that's an option to choose to do. And I think that was a win. I think that seeing the decision or the proposal tonight about moving the CCANs for the purpose of keeping things cleaner and safer and less vandalized and more of that crime prevention mindset is an important decision. We have to be responsive, and that's our obligation. And I think that at this point, I will be voting in favor of moving the CCANs, because ultimately you're sharing with us that it's not working, and those that are sleeping rough, and unfortunately defecating, urinating in this space, that's not a healthy thing for the people that are in that space, whether they're the person that's sleeping rough or the person that's enjoying the afternoon there with their child. So we have to be responsive, and I think that that's what we're doing tonight, is we get the choice to share whether or not we're in support of that responsive decision. So I'm, in summary, disappointed that it didn't work out, but I do see why we have to make a change, and I'm really hopeful that that we're listening to the community who's in desire of seeing these used elsewhere. There's been great ideas that you've showed us on the screen tonight, and I think there's some excited groups in the community going, yeah, this could be something that we can, I'm excited to see what people do with these particular CCANs. So I look forward to hearing about how this transpires, and look forward to the community coming forward and showing us what ideas they have in store to make these useful again. So thank you for bringing this forward.
We're drifting into a little bit of debate, so why don't we get the motion on the table?
Thank you very much, Mayor Clark. So I move that council approves the removal of the market pods or CCANs and revert to public programming in areas in the community where there's audience, partners, and volunteer support.
I'll second that.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Through the chair, thank you, Manager Nelson. So I've had the benefit of being on public services and hearing this presentation and having had the chance to ask my questions. It's important to narrate this for the public at large to understand the successes and challenges, I won't say failures, challenges that occurred with a well-intentioned project here called Town Square. You indicated Town Square will continue. I want to echo that. It is a beautiful space, and it has all the potential that the public wishes it to have. And in particular, the downtown core, and you highlighted a number of events that will capitalize on that. I just a couple things maybe for clarification. I believe at the committee level, I heard this. So the doors, you indicated the roll doors are not really, they're not the typical doors that people often associate with a CCAN, if you have some familiarity with it. Will those be put back on, or are we planning to look at repurposing them with the rolling down doors, or will the original doors be put back on? Just a quick question on that, and then a follow-up.
The doors as they are will stay, so the roll-down doors will stay.
They stay, okay. I'm just thinking from the purpose of access. You indicated there's lots of vandalism and access issues with it, so obviously we'll have to let the buyer or benefactor beware. In your Shape Your City information, you indicated a sale or auction. So I had asked, and I'm curious if I misunderstood at the time, I had asked on behalf of the public who were asking to myself or through myself about sharing some frustration with the fact that we were having to remove these and look at doing something with them. There is one taxpayer, even though Councillor Hirsch is absolutely correct, and certainly him and I were on council when that grant, those grant monies came forward, and we had a very short time, staff had a very short time, council as a consequence, even shorter time to develop ideas on how to utilize those provincial and federal funds. There is one taxpayer. In the end, though, the question was around how do we recoup some of those costs. I believe at the committee level, I was told because they were grant monies, we were not able to sell them, if you will, to the highest bidder. Can you just clarify what I saw on your slide and what I heard at committee?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dumanowski, through the chair. There are covenants in the grant that restrict sale for a period of time. So it was 5 years from the completion of the project. For all intents and purposes, the project was completed in December 31st, 2021 is when the funding agreement stated that. So it would be January 1st, 2026, they could be sold. If we were to sell them before that, all proceeds from that sale would have to revert to the province, who was the original funder for, grant funder for that.
Just a follow-up. So there is a possibility, the timeline you indicated may necessitate some time to remove them. I had heard there might be some remedial work needing to be done. Obviously, if there's electrified servicing in them, there'll have to be termination of that, et cetera, before they can be repurposed in a responsible way. So that's interesting. That's a revelation that I wasn't aware of at the committee level. I guess I'll end by just indicating that as much as there's some curiosity, frustration on the part of the public around those CCANs, and I know from their onset, there were critics. There are always going to be critics, but there were critics of their placement in the initial placement. Obviously, what I want to say is I know staff gave it their all. The former managing director staff, having been on public services, I know at one point we had indicated in a previous year or months ago anyway around perhaps having to do something differently, and the committee's response at that time was, you know, let's give it some time. Let's remove the burden of cost to utilizing those CCANs. Let's try and create some community events around it, and that occurred. Despite that, as you've already indicated, and I won't repeat, there were and are and remain problems with their placement. So I don't want to admit, but I do admit that we gave it our all, and I do support the need to remove them and repurpose them. And I want to end that I'm very pleased that staff and council, past and present, gave it their all when it comes to that use. And the nice thing is that our town square will continue and be a vibrant part of our downtown and our city at large. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarity, Manager Young, on the piece on why we can't sell the CCANs right now. That was actually my question. So I just want to, I guess, make a comment. I wasn't around when the council decided to do what they did, but I've been here since 1979, and that lot was a contaminated mess that we tried to give away, from what I gather. I might have my facts a little bit wrong, several times, and nobody could afford to clean it up. So I think that it was very strategic, and I support the old council's decision to beautify the piece of property that if someday, whatever the iteration of town rectangle 2.0 doesn't work, there's a future option to sell the land. And so I think they did a really good job, and I support where we're going with this. And I appreciate the thought that's been put into this and the feedback that you've received from the community. It sounds like you're going to continue to get the feedback from folks. But I actually, just thinking of SEPTED, which is, you know, the whole issue of environmental design, crime prevention through environmental design, that with those CCANs there, I think it has the vision to me of being a safer, a better gathering place for folks that actually will feel safer. So I want to support it, and thanks for the work so far.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you. Through the chair, I actually just needed a question of clarity. I had a question of clarity. So Town Square was MSI funding, was it not, through the chair?
MSP.
MSP
But
funding?
I think you
Okay.
just got the acronym wrong. there.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Clark. Weren't the market pods in 2022? Wasn't that a federal funding? A different route? I didn't think the two were tied.
If I may answer through the chair, both grants were used for the market pods. So there was a MSP grant and there was a CCRF grant from the
Yeah,
federal
so-
government as well.
Okay. So even if they were sold, would the entire amount have to go back to the MSP, or isn't a portion of CRF?
It would be staff's recommendation that there's a spirit of the grant as well, that we would not want to, I think, yeah, the spirit of those grants is that money was granted to the city of Medicine Hat to purchase these, and if there's a covenant on them in terms of the 5-year, we would want to respect that.
No, I 100% agree. I had it in my head that that was in late 2022, which was well after the MSP funding.
The timing of the grants, all of the aspects of Town Square were used for both grant applications. That makes sense. That's quite common in grant applications.
Okay, thank you.
Just one final note, to the extent that this is MSP funding, and I don't have our contract in front of us, but the criteria for the grant with credit items is that when MSP funding results in net proceeds to the municipality within 5 years of the project completion, these proceeds will have to be returned to the GOA. I don't know what you can include in net proceeds, but given that we're paying kind of a lot of money to move them, maybe there's some kind of netting out of that, but I'll just leave that with you for consideration. And we don't have any more speakers, so let's vote on the motion.
Councillor McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Next up is the 2025 Community Vibrancy Grant Distribution, and the sponsor is Public Services Committee. Councillor Hyder, do you have any introductory remarks as the chair?
Thank you, and through the chair, Mayor Clark. No, I just, we appreciate all the work that CVAB does throughout the process of community vibrancy grant distribution. They do a lot of work and long hours, and make sure that the community is supported in the right areas. So no, just a great thank you. Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would. I move that council approves the distribution of the 2025 community projects, activities, annual events, and special event grants as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion.
Councillor McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan, and that's unanimous. Moving on to item 10.3, Planning and Development Services, 2025 to 2026, fees and charges update. The sponsor is Development and Infrastructure Committee. Councillor Dumanowski, do you have any introductory remarks as the chair?
I think that's me.
Sorry, I
That's all right.
apologize. I'm so
We're often
sorry.
mistaken for each
Sorry.
other.
Councillor Sharps.
No, actually, I don't have anything introductory, and I don't know if Councillor McGrogan sat in for me. I was at RMA at the last D&I meeting, so I don't know if anybody else can speak to, I don't know if you guys had a meeting. Okay.
I think it's just rate updates, so
Okay.
we're,
I'm going
these
to
are
throw the
just.
motion on the table then.
Okay, thank
And then I'll
you.
let administration speak to it. So I move that council approves fees as specified by resolution on planning and development services fees.
I'll
And
second that.
McGrogan.
Oh,
Okay. Nope, it's good.
All right. Are we, okay, so we're having a presentation? No.
Thank you through the chair. We're just available if there are any questions, very similar to the earlier one with the clerk. We review continually our fees and charges, and this is an update on that.
All right, seeing no speakers. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I feel now that they've all three walked down here, I need to ask them a question. With the adjustment of the fees and the schedule, sorry, you walked down. So I'm assuming the main reason for this was to bring us into alignment with other municipalities. Is that the only thing that triggered this? Is this an annual review? There's three of you.
Welcome, Manager Sissons.
So through the chair, this year we actually took a bit of a different approach than years past. Years past, we would, what's everybody else charging, we'll look to do the average of that. So this year we actually took a much different approach. We looked at several key things such as inflation, looking to become closer to cost recovery, increases in costs of public engagement, increases in development appeals, increases in enforcement expectations. And then we had a couple other things such as simplifying our fee and charge table, consolidating fees and charges to single fees, and elimination of e-permitting surcharge, which is a big one, and increased service level requirements.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to ask that question because I knew the e-permitting had decreased, and I think it's important the community knows that. I also do hope that with increased, even though there's an increased cost to public participation, I'm hoping that with that increased public participation, we see maybe potentially a decrease in subdivision appeals and things like that. I'm hoping with one will lead to an increase in another. So fingers crossed, but thank you for that update. I appreciate it.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Just appreciation for the new approach to the fee structure. I don't think it matters what Red Deer does or anybody else does. It's what is our business unit and how does it look and how do we keep it healthy? And the increments seem reasonable, and I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll vote on the motion.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. We have a couple of other first readings that are under this item. Councillor Sharps?
Yes, I was trying to get away with doing an omnibus here, but I got attitude from the city clerk, so I am going to read them all individually here. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4832 to amend safety codes permit bylaw.
I'll second that.
Thank you, and we'll vote.
Sorry, McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. And that's unanimous. And just as a reminder, on first reading, we don't debate. We just save that for the second reading, so that's why we're just not debating it. Go ahead, Councillor Sharps.
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4833 to amend the business licensing bylaw.
I'll second that.
And we'll vote.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Councillor Sharps.
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4834 to amend the vehicle for hire bylaw.
I'll second that.
And we will vote.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Councillor Sharps.
And our final one, I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4835 to amend the amusement, arcade, and billiard room bylaw.
I'll second that.
All right, and we will vote.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. And that's unanimous. So now we will move on to item 10.4, Environmental Utilities 2025 to 2026 Rate-Based Budget. It says here that there will be a presentation. Is that accurate? Okay. City Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, through the chair. This has come through committee, and this is, we're looking at environmental utilities, and we're looking at how we change the structure. I will turn it over to Mr. Dickey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann, and good evening, council and members of the public. I'm here to present and answer questions about the rate-based utilities budget and the associated utility bylaws for water, sewer, solid waste, electric, and gas distribution. With me tonight, I have Jamie Garland, Director of Environmental Utilities, Grayson Mauch, Director of Utility Distribution Systems, Travis Tuchscher, Director of Energy Marketing and Analysis, and Gareth Chudley, Corporate Strategic Analyst. I'm Jarrett Dickey, Manager of Municipal Business Support. The team here today has built this budget with a focus on affordability that ensures services remain accessible to the community while balancing the financial sustainability to maintain the long-term viability of each of these utilities. We recognize that utility rates impact household budgets as well as businesses. The 25-26 budgets and associated rates continue to focus on fairness, sustainability, and the infrastructure needs that support the community today as well as into the future. Today's presentation, we walk through the rate-based utilities piece of the organizational budget. We'll provide an overview of what a regulated rate utility means and why they're regulated, provide highlights of the environmental utilities and utility distribution business plans, highlight operating and capital recommendation for the rate-based utilities, show the customer impact of the various customers recommended by the utility rates, and provide a timeline for recommended bylaw approvals for the utilities. Tonight's presentation is a continuation of the presentation from October 22nd, Council Committee of the Whole. This presentation is focused on the highlights from that meeting and to support the 2 briefing notes and the 5 bylaws that are part of Council's package. The environmental utilities and utility distribution operating and capital budgets will come forward on December 2nd for formal approval. Why are utility rates regulated, and what does it mean to be regulated? So utility rates are regulated because they're a natural monopoly. It wouldn't make sense for the city or a private company to install multiple power lines or multiple water lines to a residence. Therefore, there are rules and regulations in place to protect customers and how we calculate utility rates. In Alberta, the Alberta Utilities Commission regulates gas and electric distribution rates. In Medicine Hat, we follow AUC rate-making principles. However, City Council is our regulator. The 5 key objectives in rate-making for the City of Medicine Hat is the first one being the revenue requirement. So ensuring revenue is stable and sustainable, and each utility needs to be financially sustainable in their own merit. Equity, cost causation. Each customer class should pay for their fair share of the cost to provide services to that customer. Economic efficiency. Ensure assets are utilized effectively while ensuring the utility is investing in assets that benefit the community and utility customers that we serve. Ease of understanding. Customers understand what they're paying for. This is an area we receive a lot of questions around. We need to keep in mind that the city's utility bill represents more than one utility. In most cases, we're displaying 5 utilities on 2 pages. Administrative effort. The billing system has to be capable to make changes, and this effort needs to ensure we don't make the billing process so complicated. So we work with our billing team as well as customer service to ensure utility rates are easy for them to administer while still providing enough details to customers. I know utility rates can be confusing, and it's something that we live and breathe every day. But the good news is our communications engagement team does a lot of great work and assists us with providing information to customers to help them better understand their utility bills. This information can be found on the city's website under Home and Property and Utilities section. Understanding your utility bill provides additional information about each line item on the utility bill. In addition to the information on this page, customers that sign up for e-utility not only receive their utility bill electronically, but have access to a tool called Customer Connect. This tool provides more details specific to the customer's consumption, tracks consumption progress compared to previous months, as well as a library of information and customizable reports for consumers. I'm going to share an overview of the environmental utilities and utility distribution business plans for 25-26. These plans highlight the day-to-day activities of each of the utilities, as well as support a high-level overview of the initiatives that align with Council's strategic priorities. The mandate for environmental utilities is to provide safe, reliable, and efficient water treatment, distribution, wastewater treatment and collection, as well as waste management services. The water utility provides potable water, distribution maintenance, construction, water reservoirs, booster stations, manholes, pipes, fire flow, and hydrants, as well as aquifers. The sewer utility provides wastewater treatment, collection maintenance, construction, rapid repair response of pipes, lift stations, and force mains. The solid waste team collects commercial and residential solid waste, recycling, yard waste, and operates the city's waste management facility. These teams are dedicated with a focus on risk control of the facilities and operations, as well as efficient maintenance practices. The key objectives for the 25-26 budget cycle are financial and environmental responsibility, risk-based asset management, and operational excellence through continuous improvement. These three initiatives will be guided by positive leadership, continuous improvement, meticulous planning, and effective communication with the community. Environmental utility manages and operates municipal infrastructure to provide reliable services for the current and future needs of the community as well as the environment. Further details about these initiatives will be included as including outcomes and measures of success as part of the public process through the budget process in the coming weeks. The utility distribution department mandate is to provide a diverse range of safe, reliable, and cost-effective services to both internal and external customers of the City of Medicine Hat. Areas of accountability include gas distribution, electric transmission and distribution, engineering and design services, project management, as well as customer care. Gas distribution, electric transmission, and electric distribution services are provided to our valued residential, commercial, and industrial customers within Medicine Hat, the town of Redcliffe, and certain parts of Cypress County, as per the AUC designated franchise areas. Specialized engineering and design services for gas and electric distribution infrastructure are provided to developers, commercial, and industrial partners within designated franchise boundaries. Finally, high-quality customer care provides respectful, expeditious interactions with our customers, both internally and externally, to the City of Medicine Hat as it pertains to the department's areas of accountability. Three key objectives for the 25-26 budget include sustainable infrastructure, operational excellence, and technological evolution. As I mentioned earlier, more details about measures of success and outcomes will be coming forward in the next few weeks as part of the budget package. The 25-26 budgets were developed with an emphasis on affordability while ensuring the short and long-term financial sustainability of each utility. Each of these utilities is facing different challenges, whether it be opening a new multi-million-dollar residuals handling facility at the water treatment plant, to prioritizing infrastructure maintenance and repairs, as well as navigating the new and future regulatory requirements within the industry. The operating budgets are key inputs that come into account when we're developing utility rates. The 25 rate-based utilities will impact each customer differently. I will provide greater detail further in the presentation, but I'll walk through specific assumptions used in those calculations. At a high level, the average residential customer will be impacted by approximately $2.95 per month, which is about a 1% increase. The average commercial customer will be impacted by about $67 a month, which is about a 5% increase. and the average industrial customer will be impacted by about $2,200, which is about a 4% increase year over year. These comparisons exclude the commodity as well as the federal carbon levy. This slide provides a consolidated view of the rate-based budget for each of the 5 utilities. The base operating expenses relate to salary and wages and reflect reflect annual inflation increase of 2.3%. Contracted services and materials were held at 2024 amounts. There was no inflation applied to those areas. New operating initiatives relate to either one-time operating projects or new ongoing operating initiatives. Other expenses relate to interest and long-term debt or amortization on assets, as well as asset retirement obligations. The internal recoveries or charges line are internal transfers between departments, and these represent the utilities costs of receiving internal services provided by other departments. This methodology ensures costs are being applied to the correct funding source, whether it be property taxes or utility rates, and aids in capturing full costs of the organization, internal services to make better decision making. The changes in the base operating budget at a very, very high level are increased operating costs at the residuals handling facility at the wastewater, or at the water treatment plant, pardon me, which is scheduled to come online in Q1 of 2025. Union step increases. There's a decrease related to a residential recycling delivery model. Effective April 1st of 2025, the extended producer responsibility comes into effect. At that time, the city's contract will transition to a third-party provider. There's reallocation of staff resources towards the increased or enhanced regulatory compliance initiatives. Adjustments in third-party gas transportation contract. The city has a contract to procure gas when local production is not enough to meet local demand. The city's local gas production is decreasing, and therefore the city is required to purchase more gas. The transportation costs are really driven by 3 variables. So increased volumes to meet our local demand, increased tariffs on the procured volumes, and diminishing mitigation market. In the past, the city's been able to transfer that pipeline to other third parties. Under the new operating initiatives, the water treatment plant update, there's a SCADA, supervisor control and data, cybersecurity updates at the water treatment plant that are occurring in 25 and 2026. Changes in other operating expense are the result of additional interest and amortization associated with the sustaining and growth capital program, which I will talk about shortly here. And the consolidated rate-based budget reflects a surplus of approximately $11.6 million in 2025 and $12.4 million in 2026. These funds are used to fund long-term debt obligations as well as the sustaining capital initiatives within each of the utilities. The 2025-2026 capital budget outlines sustaining and growth capital requests for each of the utilities. Sustaining capital requests are for the replacement of aging assets and infrastructure. As assets reach the end of their useful lives, it's prudent to produce or to replace them before they fail. Growth capital budget requests are for new facilities or new services that the community or for the community or to increase capacity to support growth in the local economy. The rate-based utilities are requesting $95.9 million in capital over the next 2 years, $73.6 million in sustaining capital to replace aging infrastructure, and $22.3 million to support growth within our community. This represents a significant investment in the essential services that our community and customers rely on daily. The sustaining capital items, for example, I'll list a few. Obviously, the linear infrastructure, the water and sewer mains that provide services to the community, natural gas and electric lines as well. There are federally regulated gas and electric meter replacement program, various life cycle replacements for medium voltage transformers, overhead underground cable replacements, power poles, and various hardware attachments and switchgear. Non-linear infrastructure like booster stations, water reservoirs, lift stations, water treatment facility, and substations. A new initiative within the sustaining capital budget aligns with initiatives elsewhere in the energy division pertaining to life cycle replacements for long lead assets. For example, high voltage transformers within a substation take or require 2 to 3 years for delivery. So providing or doing predictive planning and funding allocation towards assets which will not be delivered for several years into the future. Ongoing phased progression on transmission reinvestment, the southwest substation and east ring enhancement are included in the sustaining capital budget as well. All of these investment decisions are part of a robust asset management program intended to maintain sustainable services to our customers. The Utilities Inspection Program identifies and prioritizes the annual asset management program for the utilities. These teams work closely with other utility and municipal teams to ensure effective and efficient deployment of capital, and projects are typically multifaceted and require coordination to limit disruption to the public, which is probably hard to believe given the amount of construction this past summer. The large growth capital projects, I'll list a few. The Kipling Street Southeast Main Twinning, which is approximately $6.3 million. 3rd Street Southeast Water Main Replacement of about $1.4 million. Harlow Transmission Main Interconnection of about $1.2 million. A food waste composting facility, $9.5 million. And a landfill airspace optimization expansion to cell design of $1.5 million. Specific details of each of the projects sustaining and growth capital can be found in Council's package. So that is basically an overview of all the inputs that go into how we determine utility rates for each budget cycle. I'll highlight what's new for 2025 in the water utility and why the change is recommended. I'll walk through the utility rates and how they impact the different customer classes. I'll show how Medicine Hat's 2025 utility rates compare to other municipalities' 2024 rates, and we'll highlight the always popular residential HatSmart program for customers. Like I mentioned earlier, it's important to keep in mind the City of Medicine Hat's utility bill represents up to 5 different utilities, and all this information is displayed on 2 condensed pages. So new for 2025 is an updated water utility rate design. The rate design reflects industry best practice, incentivizes water conservation, and is designed to extend the life of infrastructure by reducing peak system demand. The rate changes will be phased in over a period of time to avoid rate shock to individual customers. Fixed rates for all customers will be based on meter size at the customer's residence or business. A seasonal water usage rate, seasonal water usage in Medicine Hat is 3 times higher during the summer months than during the winter. And that's as a result, we're implementing a tiered rate structure for residential customers during high season for water usage, which is from April 1st to October 31st, and a flat rate during the low season from November 1st to March 31st. Irrigation customers will also see an increased water rate. This customer class consumes water during peak water demand for the city. We're also recommending the introduction of a water or an environmental conservation charge that will provide sustainable funding to the residential HatSmart program. This will be applied to residential customers that consume greater than 40 cubic meters of water during their billing cycle. Specific rate details can be found within the water bylaw in Council's package. These recommendations align with what other water utilities in Alberta and North America are currently doing, as well as they support the Environmental Framework Action Plan to implement measures to promote water conservation and efficiency. The development of this rate calculation provides a balance of cost recovery, profitability, as well as resource protection. Our team has been working very closely with communications, engagement, and marketing, as well as customer service. So please keep an eye on the city's website as well as social media for more information, as well as contact information if customers have questions. Before jumping into the utility rate impact slide, the commodity rate setting methodology that was approved by Council will remain status quo. The single interim commodity rate for both natural gas and electricity will continue while we await the results of the third-party energy business review. The upcoming utility rate impact slides do not include the commodity portion of the bill for that reason. And the purpose of today's presentation is to discuss the utility distribution rates. The utility bill impact to an average residential customer is highlighted on this slide. Each customer consumes water and energy differently. However, this represents an average residential customer's monthly utility impact comparing 2024 rates to the proposed 2025 rates. I'll highlight a few items. The reduction in the solid waste portion of the utility bill reflects the removal of the residential recycling fee, which, as I mentioned earlier, on April 1st, the extended producer responsibility will come into effect, and that those costs will be transitioned to the third party. The gas and electric portion of the utility bill exclude the commodity portion as well as the federal carbon levy. Although the municipal consent and access fee is included on the utility bill, it is a fee charged and collected by the municipality for exclusive rights to the land and to use the land for the infrastructure requirements of the gas and electric utility. The MCAF budget increase of 3% is a key municipal budget assumption. Although the rate is, or the charge on the consumer bill is decreasing, there is a bump in the municipal consent and access fee. The utility bill impact to an average commercial customer is highlighted on this slide. Again, each customer's consumption for water and energy is different, but we're comparing the assumptions used are on the right side of the column there, and we're comparing 2024 rates to the proposed 2025 rates. The volume assumptions are noted in the assumption column. We assumed monthly water consumption of 229 cubic meters of water in a 2-inch water meter, and the same assumptions are used on the sewer side. Solid waste assumes a 1.5 yard waste bin, and gas assumes 43 gigajoules of natural gas consumed. Electricity assumes 25 kVA of demand and about 6,000 kilowatts of electricity. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these figures exclude the commodity charge and the federal carbon levy. The net increase to the average commercial customer is about 5% per month. The utility bill impact for industrial customers highlighted here, and again, as I mentioned, every customer is a little bit different. We've just highlighted the average consumption, and we're comparing 2024 rates to our proposed 2025 rates. Water assumption is 10,000 cubic meters and a 6-inch meter. Those same assumptions are applied on the sewer side, and solid waste assumes a 3-yard cubic bin, or 3-yard waste bin, pardon me. Gas assumes 1,300 gigajoules of natural gas consumed, and electricity assumes 14,000 kVA in demand and about 6.35 megawatts of electricity consumption. And these figures exclude the commodity charge for both natural gas and electricity, as well as the federal carbon levy. The net impact to an average industrial customer is about 4%. So how do we compare? So this chart is a comparison that we do twice a year, as published on the city's website. We've included a few additional municipalities at the request of council. So we included Fort McMurray or Wood Buffalo, as well as Grand Prairie for comparative purposes. So again, as I mentioned in previous slides, it excludes the gas and electric commodity as well as the federal carbon levy. If customers are looking for this information, it can be found under Home Property and Utilities on the city's website. It's important to note that we're comparing our proposed 2025 Medicine Hat rates with other municipalities' 2024 rates. Even in that light, the average residential customer is saving approximately $760 per year compared to the average of the other municipalities shown on this slide. The 2025 HATSMART program will continue to support the same incentives as 2024. This program is fully funded through the environmental conservation charge on high-use electric, natural gas, and the proposal for the water side. This program offers incentives for residential customers to make environmental and energy-conscious home upgrades. This program makes saving money and energy easy. During 2025, this program will be transferring to the Environment and Land Department, who will administer the program going forward. So stay tuned for exciting changes. They may be coming soon. So the recommendation from administration tonight is that council approve the first reading of the water, sewer, solid waste, gas, and electric amending bylaws. Earlier, there was a motion that council was provided hard copies of the updated amending bylaws for water and sewer. The red line versions of the bylaws are correct in the package. However, the amending bylaws 4837, which are pages 289 and through to 295 of the council package, are replaced with the hard copies provided. The updates are section 8 within that bylaw was omitted in the council package inadvertently. In addition, bylaw 4836, the amending bylaw for the sewer utility, pages 321 to 324 of the council package are to be replaced with the hard copy. The updates reflect clarity on the effective date. The rates, I think in the original one said 25 and 26, just to provide clarity that it's January 1st of those years. So thank you to City Solicitor Bullock for catching that earlier today. On December 2nd, council will receive the 25-26 operating and capital budgets for the rate-based utilities as part of council or part of the city's consolidated budget presentation. Included in that package will be the rate-based utilities. And on December 16th, council will be asked to approve the second and third readings of these amending bylaws to be effective January 1st, 2025. In conclusion, I want to thank you for your time this evening. I hope tonight's presentation was informative and provided council with the budget and requested utility rate information for the rate-based utility departments. When administration develops utility rates, we continually focus on the customer impact. At the end of the day, we're all customers and residents of the City of Medicine Hat as well. After the initial analysis is complete, we put our customer hat on and put ourselves in the customer's shoes. What would the impact be if I owned a small business? Are these rates fair and reasonable? Administration makes every attempt to provide affordable utility rates to our customers while also ensuring the financial sustainability of each utility. I believe we've demonstrated that the 25-26 utility budgets strike that balance. Thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to confirm, I didn't see it in the briefing notes, but it is just the electric and gas rates under 10.5 that need to have a public hearing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. I know that this is just first reading going forward, so questions only at this point, but I did wonder if you could, sorry, through the chair, if you could maybe let the public know how the high usage conservation charges are determined, where those numbers come from.
Okay. Thank you, through the chair. So, testing my memory. So I can't remember the numbers exactly. I know the water one is 40 cubic meters. The details are within each of the bylaw, but we determine that based on making sure that the utility or the funding for the HATSMART program is sustainable. So if we need a certain amount of money, that we are achieving that, and that's based on historic spends or historic requests from the public. To determine those thresholds, we look at what high consumers, I think it's the 90th percentile of consumers consume to fund that program, if that answers your question.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, actually to dovetail on Councillor Van Dyke's question, Mr. Dickey, thank you for the presentation. One observation and then a question. The back end information, the front end information of your presentation really is important for those who take interest in this. I hope they pay close attention to it, because one of the repeated observations or questions, frustrations I receive from the public is, you know, when I look at my utility bill, I was away for most of the summer or for this period of time, and yet my utility bill was X dollars. I guess deriving in their mind's eye the fact that their absence or they're not having an air conditioner on, for example, in the summer, or minimal watering would derive a extremely low or no balance on their utility bill. Clearly, the investment side in your bylaw is indicative of the fact that there's investment. So there's infrastructure, deep service, there's, you know, the likes of residual plants that you indicated. So each utility rate payer is contributing, is a participant in the maintenance, expansion, and replacement of those utilities. So what people often mix up or wrongfully understand is that their commodity or consumption portion makes up the biggest part of their utility. And it can, depending on what they do. But and it's not to educate the public. They know this, but it's to highlight the fact that there is that piece that is significantly part and parcel of a utility bill in total. My question's around the water utility rate design that is being proposed. Also in relation to the environmental conservation component, this is not new when it comes to our existing commodities, but when it comes to water, this is a new approach. There's the residential, commercial, and large. You had indicated, and I thought I heard you say during the presentation, that the 40 cubic meter being the cutoff between base rate in the bylaw and the environmental conservation surcharge. So you'd indicated that 40 cubic meter is kind of indicative of, I think you said North American or some broad amount. I guess bearing into consideration, if you said, first of all, can you clarify, did you say North American? I think you said that, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Both North American and Alberta.
Okay, and I know this is a conversation that has been had in other arenas, but when it comes to the semi-arid component of where we live, and obviously North America has a diverse climate, and so we could be compared to other places and completely matched in a very incongruent way with other parts of Canada who have other conditions that they deal with. But when it comes to water and that 40 cubic meter, I'm not necessarily opposed to what's there, but I'm just, the threshold of that 40 cubic meter is one that I'm curious about. Can you just speak a little bit more to that in light of the fact that we are in a semi-arid environment? And so, for example, in our hottest months, for example, in the summer, the likelihood, I'm going to say almost certainty, to hit or exceed that will be increasingly challenging for the ratepayer. I have no problem saying I did my own homework on my own bill, and I see myself, I have underground irrigation, I water short amounts each day in a very average yard home, and in the summer I hit 70, pardon me. So my consumption might be higher than the average households, but clearly is well over. This isn't about what's in the best interest of Councillor Dumanowski. It's just I look at my rate, my consumption in relation to the average consumer, and I'm troubled by that 40 cubic meter threshold. So can you just speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah. Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Dumanowski, a couple questions, I think, or comments. So you talked a little bit about fixed and variable components of the bill. So the fixed component, obviously a lot of the costs associated with utility work are fixed, and it does put the burden on the customer as far as a daily rate or a fixed rate. The water utility, what we're proposing is actually shifting that flexibility more to the customer to lower their fixed rate if they have a smaller water meter and increase that variable consumption rate. So it does provide the consumer more choice from a residential perspective. The 40 cubic meters, and so when we did look at other jurisdictions and we determined the best approach for how to structure rates for Medicine Hat, we are unique. So within Alberta, it's hard to find comparators. There are lots of municipalities that have tiered rate structures, but when we look at Lethbridge is in the process, they may have already approved a tiered water rate structure. But we look at semi-arid climates like in the United States, Arizona as an example, they've had tiered water rates for decades because of the environment that they live in, water scarcity and the type of climate that they live in. When we determine the tiers, so the first tier is 0 to 20 cubic meters would be in the peak season, 20 to 40, and then anything above 40 would be that third and final tier. We looked at, I believe it was the 50th percentile or what the base rate should be based on the average consumption of the residential customer class. So that's where that number was determined, and it's in line with it's not at a step with what other comparators have for consumption.
May I follow up with the question?
Question, yes.
So my question is, so you made a comparison to Arizona. The landscaping and whatnot would be very, I would argue, quite different from our climate. And that's not to draw a disconnect between what you're saying. The 40 cubic meter cutoff being the average, and I think at one point, and I'll just ask for clarification, you had the environmental surcharge should hit the top 10% or would be activated in the top 10% of consumers over and above the minimal threshold. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm well above that, and so will many others in this community. So more on that, but thank you for answering those questions.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation, and can I please have a motion?
Yes, I move that council give first reading to bylaw 4836 to amend the sewer bylaw.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, we'll vote.
McGrogan in favor, yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. Oh, sorry, that passes. Can I have the next motion?
Absolutely. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4837 to amend the water services bylaw.
I'll second that.
Thank you, and we'll vote.
McGrogan, yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. And that's unanimous.
And one more. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4838 to amend the waste bylaw.
I'll second that.
All right, and we will vote.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. There you go. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 10.5, the 2025-2026 utility rate bylaw amendments. Can I get a motion?
Certainly, I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4839 to amend the electric utility bylaw.
I'll second that.
All right, and we will vote.
McGrogan, yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Next one. Go ahead.
I move that council give first reading to bylaw 4840 to amend the gas utility bylaw.
I'll second that.
Thank you, and we will vote.
McGrogan, yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. We just need the voting screen to reset. Thank you. That is unanimous. Next item is letter of interest, residential lots in Southland's 6C division. City Manager Mitchell.
Thank you through the chair, and in order of expediency, I'll turn it right over to Director Redden, who's online with us. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Your Worship and Council. Land and Real Estate has received a letter of interest from New Tab Homes for the purchase of 7 lots in the Southland 6C subdivision for a total of $577,500 or $82,500 per lot. The builder intends to build a single-family spec homes with each with the potential for secondary suites. The Southlands 6C subdivision was completed in 2014, with many of the homes existing there being built between 2015 and 2017. These 7 lots are smaller and have a unique configuration due to the roadway and back onto Walmart and a new multifamily development. They've received minimal interest over the past 10 years. Existing homeowners in the area are eager to see construction of the area completed. The price of the lots was originally approved by council in 2014 and have not since been adjusted for time on the market or other market-driven factors. The lots originally ranged in price from $107,900 to $134,300 per lot. This offer represents a 32% discount from the original listed price, however, brings broader value to the city through the addition of new and sustaining tax revenue for the city, as well as the introduction of new housing units to inventory. Land and Real Estate has seen success in bulk sales of lots to builders recently, as it provides them with the opportunity to take on multiple builds in an area and appropriately stage their construction. The city accounts for subdivision profitability in comparing the total development costs, which are represented on our balance sheets as costs of goods sold, to the revenue for the sale of each lot. Should council approve this transaction, it represents a $189,000 loss on these lots. However, this may be mitigated through the sale of remaining lots and amounts to the immediate reduction in ongoing carrying costs and maintenance costs for the lots to the city. This is a singular one-time revenue that's greater than the total sales in the subdivision over the last 5 years. Should the sale not be supported, there's a risk that these lots will become increasingly difficult to sell, potentially decreasing their value further to buyers and lead to a greater future loss. In alignment with policy, as this offer deviates more than 10% from the list price, council must approve the purchase price. Therefore, it's recommended that City Council authorize administration to complete the sale of 7 residential lots in the Southlands 6C subdivision, subject to the following terms and conditions. That being a total purchase price of $577,500 or $82,500 per lot. The properties are sold on an as-is, where-is basis, and the parties must enter into a real estate purchase contract in a form and content satisfactory to the city manager and city solicitor. And I do have real estate specialist Leslie Cochran online as well if council has any particular questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that you addressed our policy. It would also be helpful in the briefing note if in the future if our MGA requirements would be in there just for convenience for us. So the MGA Section 70, Municipal Government Act, sorry for the acronym. Section 70 says if a municipality proposes to transfer or grant an estate or interest in land for less than its market value, the proposal must be advertised. So your assessment is that we are not selling this for less than market value?
Yes, you're duly noted, Your Worship, and our assessment is we are not selling for less than current market value.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Councillor Van Dyke?
Sorry, can we make comments at this time?
Let's get a motion on the table.
Thank you. I move that council authorize administration to complete the sale of 7 residential lots in the Southlands 6C subdivision, Plan 1411496, Block 10, lots 42 to 48 inclusive, subject to the following terms and conditions. A total purchase price of $577,500, which is $82,500 per lot. B, properties are sold as is, where is. C, the parties must enter into real estate purchase contract in a form and content satisfactory to the city manager and city solicitor.
I'll second that.
Councillor Van Dyke?
Thank you through the chair. So I just wanted to say that this came through committee and we looked at it and so obviously we discussed it at that time and I've thought about it since and having it in our package now. And while I agree that it's unfortunate that we're not able to get the original appraised value, I think that in the interest of increasing housing stock in our community during a time of housing crisis and unaffordability, and in order to complete this development, that I would support this motion.
Councillor Knodel?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through the chair, I feel similarly to Councillor Van Dyke. I think when opportunity comes knocking and you have a need and it fills a need, it's important to take advantage of that opportunity. As Councillor Van Dyke stated, it is unfortunate that there is a loss that we have to take in this regard, but as Manager Redden made note of, there is the possibility that we will recoup costs with the sale of other properties. So I think this is an easy one for me, especially with the need of housing in our community, and I look forward to seeing these houses pop up.
Councillor Hirsch?
Yes, as Councillor Van Dyke indicated, we had this at committee meeting. I was supportive them then and I was supportive now. Really, what we have here is a case of a 10-year pricing methodology that, quite frankly, we've seen the ebb and flow of the economy. We've had a pandemic. We've had other, quite frankly, other issues that have economic cycles in between. So, and the fact that this does border on a commercial property does provide some offset in regards to pricing. It makes more sense in terms of the market. And I agree with Director Redden that this is not below market. This is actually market. So thank you.
Councillor Hyder?
Thank you, Mayor Clark, through the chair. I think this is a great opportunity for the City of Medicine Hat, and I appreciate Director Redden and his team for diligently doing their awesome job in selling and making sure the purchases of the land in the community fit our city. So I appreciate that, and I will be supporting this.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I, like others, appreciate the back-end information. I sat here when these lots were put on the market. There were a lot of different visions at the time around this subdivision and what opportunities it would bring. Clearly, that did not materialize. The market rate argument that's presented before us. So clearly we're showing on the books a 32% discount based on the current price. I'm hearing clearly that the market adjustment, if it were taken underway at the moment, would indicate that they are being sold at market rate. Just help me understand then, it's hard for me to dispute that. I'm troubled by it, but it's hard for me to dispute it. I guess I want to understand sunken costs, some of the holding costs that you alluded to that would be continuing. So the sunken costs in those properties and the fact that we've held them 10 years, regardless of them being, if they were to be reevaluated at today's rates, I'm hearing that all those factors included, including the sunken utilities and the holding costs, we would be essentially selling at cost. Is that what I can surmise from this back-end information in your presentation?
It's through the chair to Councillor Dumanowski. What we've determined through our costs to goods sold is that we are representing a $189,000 loss on these, given what the current inputs are, the cost to develop these lots. And there may be opportunity to mitigate these losses through the sale of the remaining lots that are in the subdivision that contributes to that cost of goods sold. And it also removes our maintenance costs, which we are responsible for, ongoing maintenance costs of those lots.
Just a follow-up. So I did understand. So regardless of all those inputs, there is a loss position on these. Having said that, holding costs with an unforeseen uptick or uptake of those lots potentially, not potentially, realistically would add or exacerbate our loss position. And so the recommendation is before us. So I'm troubled but with what's before me, but believe it or not, surprise you that I will support this because of the uniqueness. And I think my points and some of the points you've made, quite frankly, indicate why these lots present a unique situation. And so given all those considerations and the fact that we have these ongoing holding considerations that will, like I said, continue to worsen the marketable or the costing position into the future, I will be supporting us today.
And perhaps I could add through the chair to Councillor Dumanowski, there's also the added tax revenue that new houses on these lots will represent.
That's true. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further speakers, we'll vote on the motion.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 10.7, which was added by Councillor Dumanowski, collective bargaining.
Yeah, Your Worship, the collective agreement between the City of Medicine Hat and Local 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Electric Distribution, expired on December 31st, 2023. As a result of good faith efforts made to renew the agreement, I move that the memorandum of agreement reached between the parties concerning a collective agreement for the term of January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2027, and providing inter alia for the following general wage adjustments is hereby approved and ratified. 2.5% effective January 1st, 2024, 2.25% effective January 1st, 2025, 2% effective January 1st, 2026, and 2.5% effective January 1st, 2027.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing no speakers, we'll vote on the motion.
McGrogan votes yes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. That's unanimous. Are there any council member reports? Councillor Hyder.
Not so much report. Thank you, Mayor Clark, through the chair. I'd just like to give a great big thank you to the support of our city employees who come here tonight and get to listen to all the riveting conversation and be involved in it. And to the members of the community, I appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you.
Councillor Robbins.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I had meant to mention this earlier in the councillor announcements, and I really regret that I hadn't. But people may have noticed that Councillor Dumanowski's face is looking slightly more fuzzy than it normally is. And the reason why he's wearing his mustache for Movember, which is a month dedicated to supporting men's health, wellness, and cancer awareness. And my understanding from information received from both city announcements, which our communications department sends out to us, and also through our city manager, is that the man van is coming tomorrow to fire station number 2, which is the Trans-Canada Way fire station. And between 12 and 2, it is open to the public. So if you know a man between 40 and 70, or you are a man between 40 and 70, you can go and receive a blood test, which will help detect prostate cancer very early, or you can have a wellness assessment for mental health. These are important services that are offered from the man van, so I just wanted to encourage anyone to go out. And if you are inclined to support anyone who's growing a mustache from Movember, that certainly you can go online and learn more about it. Thank you.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Is that what that is, a mustache?
Thank you, Councillor Hyder. Yes, if I could just follow up to Councillor Robbins' point, I was going to mention it at the onset of the meeting when you asked for council announcements, but I didn't want to make it about me. But thankfully, Councillor Robbins did. No, the fact of the matter is I am growing this ridiculous-looking mustache to bring awareness, and it has been incredibly responsive from the standpoint of the public asking why. Students, teachers, community, church members, others, but it is about recognizing men's mental and physical well-being during this Movember, and so I'm proud to be a participant in bringing that information forward and that attention in an appropriate way, and I'm thankful that in about a week and a half I will shave it off. So.
Okay, sure.
Thank
City
you.
Manager Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. It's between 10 and 2, and I think you said 12 to 2.
I said 12 and 2 because that's when it's open to the public.
To the public,
But 10
okay.
to 12 was
10 to
open
2
to
is our
city staff.
okay.
Looking at the men up there.
Yeah, thank you
They could have
very
a place
much.
to go between 10 and 12 tomorrow, but the public between 12 and 2 was
Okay.
my understanding. But thank you, City Manager Mitchell.
Thank
for
you very much, and I
clarifying.
just want to say thanks to Director Koken for getting this initiative moving. Thank you.
Can I have are there any objections to adjourning? All right, we are adjourned.